Hey, this is Coach Deanna with another episode of the Winning Element podcast, The Athlete's Journey. Today, we are on the journey with Cletus Coffey. Cletus is a former pro football player and a world champion athlete. Cletus is also a keynote speaker and the host of the Recovering Athlete podcast. In this episode, we explore Cletus's epic journey. He has lived a roller coaster of a life and has gleaned a ton of insight because of it. Current and former athletes will resonate with his message and story. In this episode, we're going to discuss the Athlete Alibi, owning your story, the importance of self-awareness, the power of transitional moments, and how Cletus is now going beyond the X's and O's with coaches, athletes, and executives. This podcast is brought to you by The Winning Element, a mental and physical performance platform for athletes. The Winning Element has cracked the code for developing athletes and sharing game-changing mental and physical performance strategies that actually work. Our flagship product has been getting attention from Olympians, colleges, and high school programs from across the country and the world. We are in Australia, Mexico, Japan, Canada, and even Costa Rica. The flagship product, The Winning Element Gold Edition, which is my best-selling book, The Winning Element, An Athlete's Guide to Maximizing Mental and Physical Performance, and the 365-Day Dynamic Planner. This book and planner combo is a powerful resource for athletes who are really looking to level up, who are looking to get recruited and play at a higher level. The Gold Edition is designed by athletes for athletes. Winning and progress are about working smarter, and it's all about applying small strategies that make a big difference. And if you aren't doing some of these strategies, you're not going to be getting the results that you deserve. Most of these strategies are free and don't require a lot of extra time or money. It just takes diligence and consistency. The athlete journey is difficult, but with the right roadmap and mentor, it becomes easier and more exciting because you're actually going to see and you're going to feel results. This comprehensive athlete development program is perfect for this podcast. Will receive 20% off, a free audiobook, free shipping, bonuses, and online resources. Visit www.BeTheWinningElement.com/Gold Edition special offer. This podcast is also brought to you by Whoop. Whoop is my favorite wearable and the choice of professional athletes and serious fitness enthusiasts. If you're serious about performance and training and leveling up your life, you gotta get yourself a Whoop. Whoop provides data on your heart rate, your sleep, your strain, your heart rate variability, and more. The data that I get from my Whoop helps me to plan my workouts, my recovery days, and helps me honestly just make smarter choices that better serve my mind and my body. If you're constantly overtraining, you risk injury, you risk adrenal fatigue, and ultimately decreased performance. And nobody wants that. I've been using my Whoop for about 2.5, 3 years because it helps me understand my body and get the most out of my training. Now, Whoop's a little bit different than other wearables because it's subscription-based, meaning that you pay every month instead of all at once. And you can get 1 free month free of Whoop by going to www.BeTheWinningElement.com/Whoop. As always, you can access show notes, the special offer for the Gold Edition, and our product highlight for this episode at www.BeTheWinningElement.com/podcast019. I hope that you enjoy this episode with Cletus. Let's go. Please welcome to The Winning Element, former pro football player, world champion athlete, and keynote speaker, Cletus Coffey. Cletus, what is going on in your world today?
What is up? Hey, first off, super excited to be here. Really grateful for the invitation to come on the podcast. I love the work you're doing. It is so needed. And to be able to just be a blip on your journey and the content and the message that you're sharing, I am very fortunate. So thanks for having me.
Of course. And I feel like it'll be less of a blimp and more of a landmark. So setting you up for a big episode.
We got a lot.
We got connected because I heard your story and your journey on the Keep Moving Forward podcast. Shout out to Katy Gally because she is inspiring and incredible, and she's doing big things on her podcast and has so many episodes. I don't understand how she does that many, but
and big names on her podcast.
Oh my gosh,
huge
all the time. And I remember, I was preparing for her podcast and I heard yours, and I think there was two other ones that I listened to, and yours was the first one. And hearing your story, hearing the passion in your voice, I was like, man, I like this guy. I got to get connected with him. As soon as I was done with your podcast, I was like, man, you got to reach out to him right now. Tell him you want to connect with him and figure it out. And it was, anytime, and I'm sure, as a podcaster yourself and, in the athletic space, you hear people's stories or you see people online and you're like, do I reach out? Do I not reach out? Are they going to respond? I don't know. But you take the chance and you say, hey man, like your vibe. Let's connect. And I'm just so glad that it worked out and that we were able to instantly connect and that we were able to do this. So thank you for responding and thank you for being you.
My pleasure. Let's rip.
All right. I'm really pumped to talk to you today and to get into your story because, I want more people to hear it. And I truly believe that you have a powerful story. And I've had the benefit of hearing pieces of it. And what I love about your story is that it's so unique, but it's so incredibly relatable and to all athletes in all stages of their journey. And one of the big things that you frequently talk about is your struggle with athlete identity and how that has served you, but also how that's hurt you. And, your journey has been full of exciting adventures and a ton of transitions. So let's kick this podcast off and get into your athlete origin story and where that athlete identity really started to develop.
And I love talking about this because it kind of defines my path and my journey. I started wee high, like most of us, 4 or 5 years old, little, gymnastics and soccer, just, trying to figure it out. And my parents just kind of probably just to keep me busy, just kind of kept me moving. I had, a couple younger sisters, probably just get all of us out of the house. And so, I was grateful that they just kind of threw me into t-ball and gymnastics and soccer and basketball. And so I did it all. That's just kind of what we did. And so there was always just, then, as we got going, 5, 6, 7, 10 years old, it was just next sport, next season, next sport, next season. We just kind of kept rolling. There was no, in my mind at the time, there wasn't any thought of, I'm going to quit baseball now, or I'm going to not do soccer. It was that's just what I did. That's who I was. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, for whatever reason, I excelled in those sports and just did well. So of course, coaches kept wanting me back and it just kind of kept going, right? So, but once I kind of hit that junior high phase, 7th, 8th grade, then a lot of athletes, youth athletes start to drop off.
Yeah.
It wasn't their thing anymore. Those who did well started to excel a little bit. And for me, it wasn't a matter of what sport I was going to focus on. It was how many can I focus on? So in the 8th grade, I had a friend of mine who I played basketball with for many years, and I was a soccer player. Like that's what I did, and I was very aggressive. I was the fastest kid on the field, but I was a goalie because I just was super aggressive.
Oh my gosh!
And so I would. It was my end of my 7th grade year, and we were at a basketball game, and a guy I used to compete with, his dad comes up to my family and says, "Hey, we've heard about Cletus on the soccer field. He should come out and try football." And so, of course, my mom's like, I'm not really sure, But I'd been a huge football fan. And I was growing up in the Bay Area, in just north of San Francisco. And, of course, the 49ers were the hottest thing on earth during that time with Joe Montana and Jerry Rice and all that. So it was just football. Yeah, let's try it out. So as an 8th grader, I actually quit soccer and played tackle football for the very first time in my life. And I liked it. And so it wasn't a matter of, again, all right, that was fun. It was, okay, what's next? So that was just my attitude as a young player. And in fact, ironically, my son now is going into the 8th grade. And so he comes home just at the end of spring with his yearbook, right? Now everyone's signing the yearbooks. And he goes, "Dad, did people used to sign your yearbook?" And I go, "I think I still have my yearbook." So we go digging through my stuff. I find my junior high yearbook, pull it out. And of course, I had all my friends signing it, but there was a theme that I had not even recognized until going back in it. I excelled in basketball. I grew probably to the height I am now by the time I was in 8th grade. I mean, I was almost 6 feet at that time. So I was a little bit taller than everyone else. I was athletic. And probably every page in my yearbook, there was at least somebody who said, "Hey, Cletus, see you in the NBA."
No way.
Oh yeah. I even had teachers sign in my yearbook going, "Hey, I knew you before you were going pro.
Yes.
Make sure I get tickets to your games."
Yes.
It was mind blowing when I looked at it now going, "Oh my gosh." My identity back then, based on what I believed about myself, what others told me about me, what the marketplace, people came to me not asking me, "Hey, how'd the geometry test go?"
I don't think anybody is ever asking about geometry.
It was like, "Hey, how was the game last night? How many points did you score?" And it was just all sport related. So that was an eye opener for me, even at this age, going, "Wow, I didn't even realize." But yes, so I began to formulate this identity. That's who I was. I was an athlete. So there was no question. I went into high school as a 3-sport athlete and would have played baseball if they would have let me.
Yeah.
But I was football in the fall, basketball in the winter, and track and field in the spring. And did that all through high school, all 4 years, 3 sports. Ended up going to the California State High School track meet 3 straight years. And track and field I excelled the most out of all 3. And basketball was kind of a late bloomer. Football was definitely a late bloomer. So I was just trying to get to understand the games, but I was excelling well in track and field. And then my senior year, I had a really good year in football. I'm going, I like this. Does this end? Like, I want to go to college. Do I keep doing this? All right, cool. The problem was, yes, I was good in track and field, but I was not elite to get a scholarship to a school. And football, I was a late bloomer. No one really had heard of me by the time the recruiters, came around.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, okay, well, where can I go? So I went to a couple of schools to talk about track and field. And I said, but hey, I want to play football. And they said, well, hold on. If we're recruiting you for track and field, we want you in the spring. We don't want to lose you to football.
Yeah.
So I found a small school in Portland, Oregon that said, you do whatever the heck you want. And so I said, I'm in. So I chose my college, not necessarily based on its pristine liberal arts society and all that, the academia. It was, they let me play 2 sports. And in fact, my freshman year, I actually played on their JV basketball team. That's what I did. And everything else just I fit it in as I went along. Sports was number one. And honestly, it wasn't that my parents were pushing it. I work with parents now, and I see the scholarship hunters and the pressure to, no, Johnny's not going to the Major League Baseball. And no, Chloe is not going to the United States Olympic soccer team. It's just not going to happen for 99.99% of them. So my parents weren't pushing like that. So I was grateful for that. But for me, in my head, I was driven to go, to be something. I wanted to be an Olympian or professional athlete. That was my goal. That was plan A, no plan B.
Oh my gosh.
So
I think there's a lot of power in that, right? Like there's a lot of power in, and as a society, and especially in the education system, we're always kind of taught like, well, you got to have a backup plan. We got to have that plan B. Like what happens if that doesn't happen? And especially for you in particular, like knowing that right out the gate, you weren't at that super elite level, but you still had that vision that you were shooting for that. And you knew that eventually you could get there. You just got to find the right path. You got to find the back door. You got to find what you want. And I think that the foresight and the vision is something that a lot of athletes today are lacking, because there's the traditional path, right, for athletes, where you go through high school, if you do club, if, you reach out to colleges, and again, like recruiting is very different than it used to be for you. And it's very different than it was for me as well. But even back then for you to know that, no, sports is number one for me, and that's kind of looked down upon now, right? Like we're in a student first, and I don't think enough people say that it's okay. It's okay to just to be an athlete first. Like you're 18, you're still trying to figure out what you want to do with the rest of your life. It's okay to take a little bit more time to figure out what you want to do, and it's okay to double down on something that you're good at or something that you're passionate about. You know, we want people to do things that excite them and that serve others, and sometimes that's developing yourself as an athlete. So I want to say kudos to you for having the vision and the foresight to know what you want and then find somewhere that was going to help support you in that, because we don't see that ever. Have you met anybody who's had a similar, and especially I guess professional athletes who have had that find the back door, get in however they can? Or is your story pretty unique in that way?
You know, I find a lot of athletes that are that use what I call the athlete alibi.
Ooh.
And it's, you know, if I didn't get hurt, I could have done this. If my coach would have played me, I would have done that. If I was in the right community, I could have done this. If I had gotten into the draft, you know, or to the combine, I could have made it to the draft. We have an alibi for everything. And it frustrates me to no end, primarily because, you know, when people hear my story, they go, "Oh yeah, I went to this school, and I would have made it if I didn't have this." And I just love on them and go, "Hey, all right, that's just where your journey went. However, how long are you going to fight for that story?" And it frustrates me going, you got to let it go. You know, it's okay if you didn't make it to the pros. It is okay if you didn't get a scholarship and get to college. Like, it's totally cool. No judgment on my end. And it's exactly what should have happened for you, for your path, for your journey. But so far often we try to hold back on it. And that's more often than not is what I see. Those athletes who said, "Oh yeah, I got that alibi that they held for themselves," and they fight for that story versus letting it go and saying, "Hey, you know, there's a reason why I was injured. There's a reason why I was put with this coach who didn't see my potential, or maybe I didn't position myself to work with that coach to let my potential come," whatever it may be. So, you know, oftentimes I see more of that in athletes, unfortunately.
Well, it's a matter of what story you want to, what story you want to own, right? Like, do you want to own the alibi, or do you want to own what actually happened? Like what you wish would have happened, or what could have happened, or the unknown, or the other story, the alibi, the thing that didn't happen, versus what actually happened and how that served to put us in the right position or put us in another position or whatever. Like we can go the alibi route, and that keeps us stuck in the athlete identity, or stuck, you know, where that story stopped, versus owning the story that we're currently living.
Yeah. And I tell you, you know, my journey so again, I went to a small Division III school. By no means did I have any reason to believe that I could go from there and go play a professional sport, and nor than anybody else. And so, but I believed it. And that was my drive. And I was not going to let anything get in my way. Now, keep in mind, again, to date myself here, graduating as a senior in college, there was no YouTube. Email was just this infancy called Pine Mail that was in schools. There was no, internet was just very basic. There was no looking up at who was the player development coordinator for this professional team and who was the scouts for these teams. None of that existed. I had to go and find snail mail addresses. So I made my highlight reel tape, VHS tape, mind you. And I made probably 90 copies of this thing. I'm in my school library just recording.
Oh my gosh.
And snail mail, going about 15 at a time. I would go to the post office, love me, when they saw me coming, right? I'd bring about 15 VHS tapes, and I'd send them to every single professional team that was available at the time. So now we had the NFL, the Canadian Football League, which at the time was in America. There was teams in the U.S. The Arena Football League was blossoming. And so there was actually a lot of opportunity. for a professional for someone, a football player to play professionally. Of course, soon as I start putting myself out there, Canadian Football League retracts. They leave the U.S. So there was a bunch of jobs that left there.
Oh my gosh.
And so, and the NFL I wasn't going to the combine. I wasn't going to make it to the draft. Like that was not my path. So I said, what's another way? So I just went like guerrilla marketing style and threw myself out there, and I got 3 callbacks, which blew me away, and signed with 2 teams in 2 different leagues. And I tell you, by no means would anyone, again, picture me going down that path, but not picture me, but believe that where I came from, that I could find my way in there.
Mm-hmm.
But I just kept following you talked about kind of following the dots, like connecting the pieces in that journey. And I just kind of kept going with it. And it became fruitful.
That's amazing. Okay. So you sign with technically the 2 teams. What happens after that?
Yes. So both teams claim my rights. So one was the Saskatchewan Roughriders in the Canadian Football League. The other was the Memphis Pharaohs out of Memphis and in the Arena Football League. And then ironically, in the process, so 2 different seasons,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the Arena Football League is in the summer, and they kind of crossed over a little bit. So, but the Canadian League started first. So I signed with them and said, I'm coming. And in the Arena League, the team, I went to school in Portland, Oregon, the Memphis Pharaohs relocate to Portland.
Talking about things that are perfect for you.
Unbelievable. So they show up in Portland, and so I was able to develop a relationship with them. They hold onto my rights. So 2 weeks after my college graduation, I'm on a flight to Saskatchewan. And as I pull my mic out, or my headphones, and so I'm on a flight, like to follow my dreams. And I packed up every single possession I had in my life, roll into camp. Like, this is it. I'm not coming back.
Oh my gosh.
Let's go. And that's when I got hit with my very first failure in life. And my perceived failure at the time. And, here we are through training camp, getting an early start to the season. And it was after one of our games. And if anyone has watched these Hard Knocks on the HBO episodes, it's the real deal. The equipment manager shows up. Hey, Coffey, coach wants to see you. Bring your playbook. And I'm thinking, oh, coach is going to tell me some good things. Like maybe I'm going to get a little bit more run next game. Like maybe tell me about how great this last game was because I made some good plays. And no, it was not that case. Here's your plane ticket. Where do you want to go? Thanks for coming.
Oh my.
It was that cutthroat, all of about 2 minutes. And I look back at that situation and I just was so shell-shocked and just unprepared for that, even though I probably should have been. There's a lot I would have done differently in those 2 minutes, but I just said, okay, send me back to Portland. There's a team there. So I show up to Portland, and their season had already been underway. They're about halfway through their season. And, I rolled in going, okay, straight from the Canadian League, just throw me my jersey. Where do you need me? Like, that was my attitude. And, guys on the team were former NFL players. They were Division I athletes. Like, this was the real deal. And the coach says, hey, no, that's not going to work that way. You're going to come work out for us first. So I was like, okay. Oh, in front of the whole team. So
oh my gosh.
The whole team finishes practice. They bring me out with their quarterback, who's going to throw me out to run some routes, and they were throw me some balls. And so everyone sits around and watches me. And I was like, okay, this is a little nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
But let's go. Like, there was just no hesitation. Like, let's go. And I performed well, and they signed me later that afternoon to my official contract.
Oh my gosh. And coming off of that shell shock failure, right? And I say that in air quotes for people who aren't watching this that are listening, air quotes. That failure, being told, hey, we'll send you wherever you want to go. You say, all right, I'll get there. And you get there and you're like, hey, I'm here. We're going to do this. Let's rock. And then you do rock it. And then you're on the team. Like, what did that do for for your confidence? Because I would imagine that after failure, thinking that, like, I'm playing well, things are going well, and then you get cut essentially and sent back, and then having to go and try out, was this a rise to the challenge and succeed, throw both hands up in the air and get excited? Or was this one of those, what did that do for your confidence?
It was a mixed bag. It really was, because I felt like I was being demoted. Like my dream was being put down to the next level, when in hindsight it actually wasn't. It was actually elevating it. But at the time I'm thinking, dude, I've never not started for a team, let alone been cut from anything in my life. And I had not been taught. I've been taught how to set goals. I had taught how to win, how to succeed, but no one ever talked to me about the elements of failure and how important that is in the process. I was never taught how to fail. And it's something that I have a challenge with now with coaches, in that, we think that through sport we can learn character. And I don't believe that. I think teaching character is how you learn character. And through sport, the opportunities are there for us to learn it. We just oftentimes forget to communicate through the language of sport what these things really mean.
Yes.
And so a loss in my mind was a loss. It wasn't wasn't learn how to process the failure and how to use that as a stepping stone to get to the next level. So I went into it a bit jaded, okay, let me just do this really quick, and then so I can get back. And it wasn't until like 2 years in going, okay, hold on a second. Like, I'm here to stay. Like, this is good. I'm thriving. It's a different game. I get to play in amazing arenas like the Staples Center and Madison Square Gardens, and we get to, see all these beautiful cities in this country, and I get to play football. So it took me a while to really settle in and be grateful for the opportunity that I had.
Oh my gosh, that's really cool. So as you're playing professional football, as you're kind of settling in, what happens next? And, were you focused on, as you were settling in, were you still thinking, what's the next step? Or, what comes next after that?
So definitely was the next step. So at the time, the NFL had branched into Europe and created a developmental league called NFL Europe. And so for me, I saw that, you mentioned it earlier, which was beautiful, the back door. So I thought, if I'm going to reach the pinnacle, which would be the NFL, I got to get into the back door. So I had met he called himself an agent out of Frankfurt, Germany. Whether he was an agent or not, or a mafia member, I don't really know. But nonetheless, the guy had incredible pull in the sports community. He was a soccer guy, very well embedded, obviously, in Germany, in the soccer community, and working with soccer athletes. But the NFL had a team there, the Frankfurt Galaxy. So what the NFL did at the time is they would allocate some of their signed players to the NFL Europe to get them to develop in the offseason from the NFL. However, each team could bring in a couple of athletes on their own outside of the NFL. And oftentimes it was local players, maybe like a kicker or a lineman or something. Usually the skilled positions, quarterback, receivers, all that were American. So he pitched it to their owner, and they said, all right, let's bring this guy in. So again, I was not necessarily the best player. I was not your D1 top prospect. That was not me. What I knew is I just knew how to connect and kind of find my way to navigate this. And so they said, yeah, okay, we're going to bring you in. Meanwhile, I'm still playing out my season. And so we get plane tickets arrive. We're ready to head over. And I break my leg.
What?
In a game.
No.
In an indoor arena league. I break my leg. So I was due to meet up in Kansas City. I was going to hook up with a defensive back that was allocated from Kansas City. We're going to fly to Frankfurt. And I break my leg. And I broke my fibula and rolled up all the ligaments in my ankle, and pins and screws all through the ankles and the plates and the fibula. Like, I was not going. I mean, the window closed very quickly after that. That was the low at that point, the lowest time of my life. Going, like I had it. Like it was right there. That to get to that next step.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, why did this happen? Why me? Why now? We go through all that, just
Oh, yeah.
depressed with my cast and sit on the couch going, no, like this was supposed to be the next step.
And with screw, like that's a long recovery process. That's not just, oh, I sprained my ankle, well, and like broken leg, okay, but the pins and the screws and the broken leg, like that's a long recovery process. So I'm sure you had plenty of time to think about how that was, why me, that next, it's right there. It was within my grasp. I was so close. During your rehab process, as you were going through the, physically recovering, and you were, mentally, I'm sure, going back and forth of, gosh, did you ever think, do I keep going? I'm going to hit it hard after this, I'm going to continue towards that goal. Did your goal shift? Were you 100% done? What was your mental state and kind of, the reframe of your goals going forward?
I was damaged material, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't have, this was the one thing that I could not afford. I didn't come with a big name, with a big pedigree, coming from a big school. And, I was having to earn every single rep,
Yeah.
every single practice to prove myself, and would, need to continue to do that. And this was a big setback that I really couldn't afford. So, because by the time it happened, I'm 25, 26 years old, still trying to continue this career. I'm old. I'm old now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm damaged material. And so I ended up rehabbing it. In the process of rehab, I actually am doing lateral boxes. I plant, tear a meniscus in my knee.
No.
Go in and get that done,
Ugh.
that procedure done. And so at that point, I just said, this is it. I'm done. Got to tie it up. And at the time, it was easy because I could physically see it. Okay, look, it's not going to be for me to kind of take the next 12 months to ramp myself up, because the ankle took a long time, as you know, with ankles.
Yeah.
Ankle took forever. And then the knee, I'm saying, okay, now I'm 27, trying to find my way onto a roster. Like my window was gone. So it was, at the time, it was easy. Afterwards, it became incredibly hard. But it was easy to say, okay, I'm done. Let's move on.
Oh my God.
That's where it was. Yeah.
And with your story, again, to hit on this theme of transitions, you transition from sport to sport, you transition from team to team, you have this athlete identity. It's something that you've grown and that you've built up. And then you get to this point where, your dream is so close. It's right here in your hand. You get injured, it happens again. And then you're at this place where there's going to be a transition out of sport, or potentially out of sport. Did you immediately go, did you know what you wanted to do? How did that transition work, and what did you transition into?
So there's the old saying that an athlete dies twice. Okay. The first time is when their sporting career ends. Mm-hmm. And I felt dead. Right?
Yeah.
I was lost. I did not have a plan B. I was not preparing for a career after sports. The cliche thing was, oh, you're going to get into coaching. And I did. I started coaching high school football. I didn't like coaching. Let me take a step back. I liked coaching. I didn't like the coaching lifestyle. See, my
right
coaches.
There with you. Yes.
Yes. Seeing my coaches, I come up, I show up for an early morning workout. They're asleep on their couch in their office. They've been breaking down film all night. Usually there was booze on their breath. It just was like they're disconnected from their families. I just don't like this. It's not for me. Okay. Great. I love working with coaches. It just wasn't for me. So then what? And I didn't know. And so what I did is I created a habit and a pattern of just going to get a job for the sake of needing a job. Mm-hmm. And because again, I didn't retire with a huge bank account of money. See, it's easy to look at those athletes who transition out because maybe they're very wealthy, or maybe they're now announcers on TV, or
Yeah.
they're pitching ads for different different corporations. Like, it's easy to see how those athletes transition, or the athletes who maybe are in trouble financially or in trouble with the law. Like, the news loves to talk about those athletes as well.
Yeah.
When I was looking around, who are other athletes like me? Who else, had their cup of coffee, like took a shot at it, and have been successful in their transition into life after? And I couldn't find anybody like me. So I just kind of went. So at the time, I just said, all right, I'm going to suppress my athleticism. I'm going to create a resume. I'm going to go get in the corporate world. I'm going to go make some money. Because again, I'm starting at 26, 27 years old. All my buddies had already been given stock options
Yes.
at their corporations. They're moving up the ladder. And I went from, hey, we saw you on ESPN last night, to, hey, what are you doing now? And I'm going, I didn't want to say, I was embarrassed to say, I'm starting over.
Yeah.
I'm starting at in the mailroom. I'm like, screw that. I'm not going to the mailroom. I'm not going, I need VP level work right now. You know what I mean? Like, that's where my head was.
Yeah.
I've been up here, and now you're asking me to go back down here when I've been this thing for my entire life, and now I'm not it anymore. Who the hell am I? And that was, again, I didn't know at the time, but looking back, I mean, understanding self-awareness, like, I was just lost. I didn't know who I was. People weren't calling me anymore, checking in with me, asking me about the games, asking me about what's going on next season. The calls stopped. The people coming, hey, can I get some tickets to the game? Like, all that stopped. So I kind of lost my pipeline to people needing me or wanting me.
Yeah.
And I felt rejected. I felt alone. And so I struggled the NFL like a good decade.
And that's a hard thing to do alone, like making a transition into corporate world, or even starting in corporate world, no matter where you are. We need our network. We need people to help not only take us under the wing and guide us, but we need somebody to say, hey, we think you'd be good for this, or hey, have you heard of this? And when you're not getting that, the people who are calling you saying, hey man, what's going on? And you're like, hey, I'm struggling. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do. You didn't necessarily have that connection. So I would imagine that that's even more isolating. So there was nobody pulling you and pulling or pushing you into other things. And that had to have been a really difficult transition. And then to continue to do new jobs or different things and trying to find what that next thing was going to be, what was going to be the next opportunity, what's the next job, what's the next way that I can, and kind of like you said, like validate that sense of self, and like create that new identity of, I am somebody who is successful, or I am somebody who serves others, or whatever that new identity is going to be, because you were this thing for so long, and now you're searching and finding and essentially creating who that new person is going to be.
Yeah. And the easy thing to do is to look at those around us who we know, love, and trust, and say, oh, I trust this friend of mine. And so what I would do is I would apply to their company. And this is someone who I either went to college with or friends with. And I'm going, I can do what you're doing or whatever. And they're like, yeah, let me hook you up. And I would get rejected. I wouldn't get hired.
Yeah.
So I was putting out all these, and my resume was professional football player, college degree, right?
Yeah.
And so I was not getting hired. And so that, again, I had been rejected just a couple times in my life through sports. And now every single resume I'm putting out, they're saying, thanks, but no thanks. Oh my goodness. What do I do? Where do I go? And so what I ended up doing was finding like just me and the way I work, for better or for worse, was screw it. I'm going to go do it myself. So what I found was my entrepreneur fire, realizing that I had this drive, I had this hunger to reach my highest potential in sport. And I did, right? I got to be the best that I could potentially be. Didn't get to the level I wanted, but I reached my highest potential for me. Now I wanted to go reach the highest potential in something else, and flipping resumes to companies just for an opportunity, like, just didn't give me that same fuel. But entrepreneurship, I can go create something. I could go add value to an organization or someone else's lives through my creative genius, I'm all in.
Yeah.
Didn't know what the heck that was, but I like that idea. So I just, again, didn't have a plan B, just like you did with sport. Plan A, entrepreneur, business, let me go build it. Hey, I got bills and I have not a lot of money, but I don't care. I'm going to go. So hindsight, it probably wasn't the best plan, but it's just, you can see the pattern of who I am. Like I get this, something that I'm passionate about and a goal of mine, and I go for it. And like, that's my main focus, for better or for worse. So
lots of lessons in the for better or for worse.
Lessons, lots of lessons.
Lots of lessons.
I tell you, but it's something that, it's caught for me. And of course, in my mind was the first business I'm going to touch is going to flourish, and I'm going to have the money, and I'm going to have the house with the view of the ocean. Like that's just what is it. Mm-hmm. Very rude awakening. 4 businesses later, I had gone through.
All right.
And what happened was, and I actually got into a financial company and was helping build that. And I said, I can do this on my own. So I branched off, started my own. Everything was growing. And then, 2008, 2009.
Oh, yeah.
Boom. Yeah. Crushed it. Absolutely destroyed my business. And, I take full responsibility, but, young and ignorant in the space, I'm going, this can't be the end. I'm going to borrow some more money, keep the lights on, keep people employed. This can't be it. That was the end. And so I had to unwind that, creditors coming after me, the scariness behind that, going, oh my gosh, how am I going to breathe? How am I going to survive? And then I go to Eugene, Oregon, to the Prefontaine Track Classic, which I host every year down there in honor of Steve Prefontaine. And I kind of rekindled with and again, I had taken my athletic career and just threw it in the drawer completely. I tried rec basketball and, people invited me, everyone wanted me to become their flag football team. And it just like nothing turned me on. They all were still they're identified with who they were in high school or college, and they want to play that way. And I'm like, this is not for me. Like, I don't need to be injured. No. I don't need to mess with this.
Yep. Nope.
So I was struggling in all areas of my life. My relationships were struggling. Yet I was, I had two children who I brought in. I was married with 2 kids. Oh my gosh. Brought them up, and I just lost my business. I am struggling with who I am. I'd suppressed who I was, as to not be labeled as the jock or the athlete, so that I could get hired somewhere. And then I go to this track meet, and I go, I love track and field. I've always loved it. And I was a decathlete in college, so I thought, maybe I could start running again. Maybe that would do something for me. So I hooked up with a coach, and he started training me for a year. And 2 years, a year and a half later, I go and compete at the Masters World Championships for Team USA, and we win a gold medal.
Yes.
And I was like, I'm back, baby. Like, I'm back. Like, this is me. I feel great. I'm back in and people are, again, my family's calling me again, going, hey, when's your next meet? How'd you do at Nationals? When's Worlds? What times are you running? Like, it was coming back again. Mind you, no one was calling me when my business was absolutely in the tank and asking me, how much are you in debt now? How much are you struggling? Right? Those calls weren't coming. Yeah. People just ignore me. Like, I'm not going to mess with him. He's in a world of stuff, and we're not going to even touch it. Which further, for me, like, digs me deep into the depression. But I was back as an athlete. The problem is, you don't get paid to run. There was no sponsorship. There's, I had the gold medal, but it went right into the sock drawer. Like, there was I had to come back to reality and go, I need to support my family. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know what that was. I knew who I was and where I wanted to go. I just couldn't connect the dots.
Yeah.
It wasn't there yet. And so I struggled mightily through that process.
Oh my gosh. During that time when you were training, you're juggling everything that's going on in your personal life and business, and trying to make the ends meet, trying to make things work, and try to figure out, okay, what's trajectory to go. And on this other side, on the soul side of like things that you've been connected to for so long, and you find like you're back, you're training, you're having a good time. Was that, it seems helpful and hurtful at the same time, right? So like being able to, give you that confidence and a place where you're winning. I'm winning. It feels like I'm winning again, because it sucks to lose or feel like, right? Like failure, it feels like we're losing, even though it's like, feels like a lot of growth, feels like a lot of uncomfortable growth, but it feels like failure. And, you can fail 1, 2, 3 times and you're like, okay, growing. But at some point, sometimes that feels heavier. And it sounds like at some points it was very heavy. So at the time that track was coming back in your life and you were able to express yourself in that way, you were able to get that gold medal, you're a world champion athlete, for you, was that something that was helping build confidence, or that was helping to serve you as you were trying to figure out everything else? Or was that, what was that like for you as far as, serving you or hurting you, or a little bit of both?
Yeah, no, it definitely was. So this is how it would go. I would go to the track. I'd get a great workout in. I'd see my times improving. I'd get in the car. I'd drive home. I'd pull up in front of my house and I would cry.
Oh,
And just in pain, because I had to walk in that door where at the time I was married. I had 2 kids. So I had 3 sets of eyes watching me walk in the door, confident as all can be on the track, but completely depressed outside of that. That I have to walk in and I don't have the money to pay the bills. I'm trying to deal with these creditors. I'm trying to figure out how to go out and make money, struggling mightily in that, thinking I've got the idea, but in reality, I didn't. It was just, I was, simply just doing it because I was desperate.
yeah.
And so I was, the next shiny thing, like I'm super desperate, like then maybe this is it. And that aligns with me and who I am. And what that did is it put my wife in a position where she now was having to take over the financial load. I then had to take on, because of that, I had to take on the role with the kids more. And it put our masculine and feminine
yes,
juju into different worlds that we were uncomfortable with. And so that caused chaos between her and I. And so and she's a highly, highly competitive athlete as well from her days. And so here we have 2 athletes coming together, trying to win. And at the time, and I can only speak for myself, like I was trying to win. I was trying to be right, that I was on the right path. I was trying to be right, that this was where we needed to be. I was trying to be right, that, hey, a little pain means gain,
Yeah.
that you can get through this. And unfortunately, I wasn't open and receptive and listening to the fact that that's not the path that she was on. So it caused a lot of dysfunction. And we ultimately ended up in a divorce. We couldn't sustain that the way in which it was going. And although it started to improve and get better, the damage had been done. And it was hard. Like I said, I was in a really tough place where I felt so good, but yet I was my real life. The track was a way to escape. That's all it was. It was escapism from my reality, which was I needed to provide. I needed to take care of my family. I was struggling with how to do that. I wasn't asking for help. I wasn't being vulnerable and saying, hey, everybody, I'm struggling. Who has ideas? It was, I've done this before. I'm an athlete. I can get I can get through this. No pain, no gain. And I would escape to track which I felt like myself, to escape the real challenges that I was ultimately having in my life.
Oh my gosh. So if you were to go back, and this is a very familiar story for, I'm sure, a lot of people, a lot of athletes, that sometimes we use our sport as a way to feel better, feel like ourselves, escape, or, deal with the things that we need to deal with. I know that for me, in some parts of my life, that kept me busy. That kept me doing. That kept me from, focusing on other things, because I was doing this, because this was more important, because I was really good at this. So I don't have to see that, right? So for you, as you're doing all of this, you know, how do you dig yourself out? How do you ask for help? How do you develop? How do you not necessarily get out of it, but how do you transition? And if somebody was going through this, what piece of advice would you give to either a younger you or again to an athlete who is, or a former athlete who is going through something similar and who is really feeling the tug and potentially using sports as a way to not look at their stuff?
Yeah. A thing for me was there's a lot to this, and one being I began a personal development journey,
Ah.
and I got to figure me out. I
Mm-hmm.
got to understand what is going on because my macro way of doing this is not working. I can't muscle through this. Bigger, faster, stronger is not working. So I went on a personal development journey, and all it did was make me angry when I started reading the books and just, finished a book, I picked up another one, and I was just angry, going, here I am. I'm in my mid 30s, and no one has ever taught me this stuff before. And I've spent thousands of hours with leaders, with coaches,
Mm-hmm.
and none of this was ever conveyed to me. What happened? How did I miss this? And I felt like I was the last person finding this, right? Thinking that everyone else knew these secrets, everyone understood how this worked, and I'm the last one to find it. So I was pissed, going, this isn't right. But I just continued to devour it and try to understand this process and who I am, and that lit me on fire, going, oh man, now I get it. The problem is I dug myself such a big hole,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't like I was, you know, getting out of it was going to be easy. What I further did was just like, I'm going to sit here and try to understand this more because before I take action, I needed to understand who I am. And I think that was something I would do differently next time. Because I know how excited we can get when we kind of start to see some clues and we get excited about some things. But there has to be an equal action part to that. And I just kind of sat it and in my zen and try to figure out myself and my energy and how to be present and how to communicate and all that. And there was only so much I could have learned. I needed to go take action. And so I would definitely recommend to athletes to take that action. And the first thing I would recommend you doing is self-awareness work.
Yes.
That was the biggest piece for me, to actually take a step back and go, hold on, who the heck am I? I'm this athlete and I'm still trying to think like that and behave like that. But in fact, that's not who I am. It's what I did. I played sports. It's not who I am. Who am I? And so asking myself those questions, sitting with those things, seeing the impact of my decisions over the past decade, what those have done, asking other people, hey, what do you think I'm good at? Where do you think I'm challenged? What are people coming to ask me questions about these days? So it was doing that work and tallying all that. It's not like overnight you can do that. Like in one day, it takes some time, to do that. Is understanding, going, okay, this is who I am, and in that process, I can go ahead and do something over here, like get a job and support my family, and that's okay because I'm still this thing over there. It's part of the process.
Yep.
It's not, Cletus, you're going to go be a professional athlete, nothing else. It's, hey, you're gonna be this new thing, which is, my entrepreneur path. But at the same time, I can still I had responsibilities. I've got, I had the kids, and so I'm going, I need to be able to support them and do me at the same time.
Oh yeah. I'm right there with you. Like that dirty word called balance that we're all trying to find, right? Like that's something, and I like to call it harmony more as now, right? Where you're kind of integrating and developing, right? Like we always should be developing. And sometimes as athletes, we focus really hard on the physical stuff or on, what's going to make a difference in our sport or what's going to get us to that next level or what's going to help us level up. That sometimes that we forget that that's also very much inward work that self-awareness, being able to be clear in our mind and see how our decisions affect other people, how our decisions are affecting ourselves, why we're kind of doing things, our pattern behavior that might be limiting us, or, could be there because we didn't know that it was there until we know that it's there. But that self-awareness and that ability to work inward and then integrate that into the life that we're creating and the people who are a part of that too, right? Being able to integrate these different pieces of ourselves, put it all together, and then be able to go out there and figure out, okay, where do we need to, which way are we going? And how are we doing that? Right now, I know that you're doing really incredible work. You're going beyond the X's and O's. You're talking to executives, you're talking to youth athletes, you're talking to coaches, and you're really helping athletes who have had a story just like you really find and create their new identity. And again, go beyond the X's and O's. Now that, you've had a couple of businesses that weren't the thing for you. Are you feeling fulfilled in what you're doing? Are you excited? Tell me more about what you're doing now.
Yeah. So my previous businesses, I either got into, or jobs I got into for money, flat out.
Yep.
I saw my buddies making money. They were, out golfing and taking these exotic trips. I'm going, yeah, I want to do that too. Thinking that's what I wanted to do. And so I chased it. And as and people are listening, that, when money pursued directly, oftentimes leads to challenging times. And that's exactly what happened to me. My main focus was to make money. And at times I did. And then other times I lost it all, because that was my main focus. And so all the while I was making money, I wasn't fulfilled. And yet that was okay, because I want to make some money. I want to go on those trips. I want to have the nice house and all that. It's just the stuff that clouds us. I was totally bought in on that. And it took me losing my financial company and being utterly humbled, completely humbled in the process of, I don't know what to do. I don't know the next step, and I need help to do that. That I could start to say, okay, look, there's something greater for me. I don't know what it is, but I just need to trust the process. And that's where ultimately the path that I started to go on. But what I began to realize is I'm not alone in this. Yeah. There are other athletes who are struggling through the same thing that we don't hear about in the media. And people like you and I, who have hit various different levels, from, high school athletes who talk about, I'm on campus lost because I don't have my crew, my teammates, my tribe, my coach. And so everyone's struggling on different levels. So, bottom line, I just said, there's a gap here that needs to be filled. And I feel I can help do that. And I can talk to it. I don't have to go study up on my financial exams and try to understand how money works. And I know this.
Yes. Yes.
So I started doing that. So I started talking with, working with former athletes who are going through the struggles in the transition. And in the process, I'm going, God, there's a lot of us.
So many.
Anxiety, depression, mediocrity. So many athletes stuck in mediocrity just for the sake of, I don't know, what I'm afraid to take risks. I'm afraid to do something uncomfortable because I have a family and I have bills, and which I totally respect and understand. I'm there. I get it. However, we have a mindset. We have a drive. We've got this focus. And so I thought, well, in order to get to more former athletes, because they're my number one. I love serving them. But to get to help this challenge, I need to get to athletes before they roll out of school.
Yep. Before
they roll out of sport. So that's why I started working with coaches to say, hey, through the language of sport, are you incorporating a philosophy and a process that can better prepare athletes for life after sports? And I'm not talking about having a career day and just coming and talking about, meet some recruiters and all that. No. The things that the whole personal development journey that can be intertwined and weaved into your coaching, into your philosophy, so that when I leave sport, today I can teach you how to run a route, I can teach you defensive schemes, but I couldn't teach you at the time, how to be an active listener, how to effectively communicate, how to not be defensive, how to find self-awareness. emotional intelligence. I didn't know those things. I had to go uncover them for myself. So anyway, so I'm now working with teams and coaches that help through the language of sport communicate that to their athletes, which then parlayed into corporations. I started getting a couple of businesses are going, hey,
Yeah.
we're tired of talking about the X's and O's of sales, how to pick up a phone, how to close. Like, how do we build up people? And that's what it all comes down to. How do we build up human beings first? Because if we can do that, their performance in sport and in business is going to follow.
Absolutely.
So, and I'm on fire for it. I love it. Like, let's go. Let's do
Well,
more.
you're in your element, right? Like anytime that you've been in your element, you've been able to elevate. Anytime you've been in your element, you've been able to serve. You've been able to reach your potential. And now, you're in your element and you're going to reach that potential, and you're going to help a lot of people. You're going to help a lot of athletes, and you're really going to open the eyes of a lot of coaches. For me, I see a lot of coaches who, and the athletes that I work with, is 95% of these coaches aren't teaching these mental and physical performance strategies. They're not teaching them. No. And even when I was coaching, and I'm sure you can attest to this as well while you were coaching, you don't always have time, or it's hard to make time. It's hard to put it in there. It's hard to integrate it. It's hard to put it with everything else. It's a hard thing to do. So, if it's not natural, if it's not your expertise, if you don't have a degree in it, if you don't have a certification in it, and if it's hard to do, we're probably not going to do it as coaches. I mean, I have the expertise. I have the certifications. I can speak to it. I even have the plan to do it. But being able to put that together when you're managing parents and athletes and, playtime and practices and you just don't have the time to do it. So with what you're doing now with coaches and helping them infuse that into their culture and helping them to do that, I think, and when coaches are educated and when you show them how to do it, I think that's where we're also going to see a lot of athletes being able to be more self-aware, more able to really perform and be better people, right? Like there's a reason why we build up the person first, and it's so that they can be awesome human beings that can go out there and make their difference in whatever way and have their journey. So what you're doing is so necessary and so powerful and so worth it. So I commend you, and I'm so excited to see where that goes and see how many athletes that you are really able to affect and coaches and everything. So thank you so much. Throughout your journey with your transitions and, with your story and everything that you've been through so far, it's clear that you are an unstoppable guy. This year, the Winning Elements theme is unstoppable. For you, what does unstoppable mean, and how are you living into that today?
So when in my self-awareness work, like the one thing that I know about myself is when I have a goal, when I have something I'm passionate about, I'm going to go for it. I'm not going, and things are going to drop in my life. Things are going to be, aren't going to be in alignment. But at the end of the day, like, that's what I do well. And that's where I want to go. Even when I got, I got my little kids here.
I love it. I love it. It makes me
They're
so
knocking
happy.
on the door here like, Dad, let me in. You've been on this podcast for so long. That's not going to stop me, because I'm here to be with you and support you. But that's where I see a lot of the people around me saying, that are having difficulty saying, look, I'm going to just do it because this may happen, or I may upset, my parents or my spouse or my kids. When I see it, I align with it, I go for it, and nothing is going to stop me in the process. Now, when I'm prepared for now, which I wasn't in my earlier days, is it may not work out. It may not work out, but that's all right. I'll move on to the next thing that I'm passionate about. So let's go.
I love it. I love it. As we bring this podcast to a close, what's next for you, and where can people connect with you? How can businesses bring you in? How can coaches get you out there? How can people connect with you?
Easiest way, cletuscoffey.com, and coffee is Coffey. CletusCoffey.com. I'm at Cletus Coffey on all social channels. By all means, you can reach out to me, ping me, DM me. Let's connect. I am. Let's see. I'm down in UTEP next month, down and working with the miners down there, and I just like you, I'm putting myself out online, and so I've got my informational products and trainings and academies that are all in the works right now. So all that fun stuff is in process just to help scale and grow my business. So I've got a busy next 12 months ahead of me.
Nice.
But I'm excited.
Well, as stuff starts to come out, be sure to let me know. I will be putting that stuff out. I love what you're doing. The Winning Element is here to support you and coaches and everybody. So we will be putting that out as well. Thank you so much for coming on, telling your story, and thank you for the powerful work that you are doing with athletes, coaches, and of course, executives.
Love it. Let's keep it on. Keep going.
Nice. Well, I hope you, the listeners, enjoyed Cletus's journey and that you will continue to come back to this podcast and become inspired by the stories and empowered by the strategies shared so you can level up, you can unlock your true potential, and you can enjoy your own journey. I am so grateful for your attention and hope that you got something special out of this episode. Make sure to follow Cletus on Instagram and check out the Recovering Athlete podcast. Please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review, and don't forget to tell your teammates and friends about this podcast. If you want to see us interact, you can watch this episode on YouTube. And if you want more awesome content, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of the places. And you can always connect with us on www.BeTheWinningElement.com. Until next time, train with purpose, play with passion, and seize the day every day.